Hi, my name is Virginia,
And I'm John.
and we're with VJ Books, and today
We're talking books.
We've had questions over the years about how John got involved in book collecting, and that prompted us to do some brainstorming about the importance of introducing book collecting to the new collector. So I thought I'd ask John a few questions today, interview style, find out what his interests were, how he got started in this lifelong hobby, and how you might be able to take away some information for your collecting experience as well. So, John, tell us about book collecting. How did you get started in collecting in general?
Well, actually, I've collected my whole life. As a young boy, I collected stamps. I started with stamps of the world and realized just how big that was and narrowed it down to collecting just the stamps of the United States. I still collect. I have a small collection that gets very little attention, but it's got 50 years invested in it. So I moved from that to coins and paper money, but found them far too negotiable to collect.
Okay.
They seem to slide right through my hands. And then I dabbled in art and wine and a few other things. And then when I was about 20, I started reading. Didn't read as a child.
Really?
Disappointed for that lost time, but I made up for it pretty fast. And one book was a turning point. It was The Godfather by Mario Puzo. And that book and the character development really gave me a thirst for good reading, and I've been reading ever since. And that's how I got started.
Now, when you say got started collecting, did you immediately start collecting first editions, signed first editions?
No, I collected everything. It's the days of bookshelves made out of particle board and pumice blocks, and I always thought that it was a kind of a representative of a little bit of literacy and I was proud to have the books that I had read displayed in my living room. And so I started collecting books, and I was a neophyte. I knew nothing about what to collect or how to collect. I just accumulated what I liked, whether they were paperbacks, hardbacks, book club editions. I didn't know or differentiate between them. Later on, I learned about the value of books and started narrowing and weaning stuff out of my collection.
So you started out with the joy of reading. Would you recommend that for new collectors?
Well, that is the backbone of it. That's
As
that's what
opposed to
drives it.
collecting that which is going to sell later on for high value.
Well, I think that is a secondary attribute of collecting. The value is wonderful, to accumulate a collection that has some worth and something that you can pass on to your heirs is something, but that's not really why we collect. Collecting is an after product of reading and the love of reading and finding yourself enthralled with an author, and you want everything that he wrote or he or she wrote.
Now, I know that you collected art at one time. How does the art collecting that you did relate to the book collecting that you do?
Well, I think since the invention of the book jacket, art is a big part of the display. It's the marketing value. When you walk into a bookstore, they design these covers to catch your eye when you come in so that you'll pick it up. And there is a real art value in every book.
Okay. And then stored value. Of course, you do collect because you want to have an appreciable asset, right?
Well, that's true. That's when I started narrowing my collection. It didn't make sense to have paperbacks when what you really wanted was a first edition, and then to narrow that even further to get it autographed by the author. So I think the ultimate collectible is a first edition signed by the author in pristine condition. And, you don't want to open it to read it. You want to get two copies, one to keep and one to read.
Okay. Well, so the joy of reading, number one reason why someone would collect books, and then moving to the visual art of it for that beauty, then stored value. How do you recommend a new book collector start recording their value?
Well, it's really important to know where you got the book. I keep mine on a spreadsheet, and to know the provenance of a book, where I was when I got it signed. When you go to resell a book, it helps to know that where you got the book and how much you paid for it. Okay. And so I keep records on that. Most collectors of anything, from stamps to coins to spoons, know where they got them and what they paid for them, and then there are all kinds of places that you can go to ascertain their current value or their appreciation.
Okay. And then finally, completion seems to be a big issue for our customers, and you in particular, for book collecting. Tell me about how important it is to complete a series or complete your collection.
Well, that's the obsession of book collecting. That's the absolute passion. You want everything in every particular different type of book or edition, and it
Really?
just it can get really bad.
We're doing another series on hoarding, totally different channel.
We had a good friend who was a Clive Cussler collector who recently passed, and his collection, he had a whole room in his house, and he had every possible edition, foreign and English, of Clive Cussler's books and displayed them. He called it the Cussler Room. So it can go from the modest to the extreme. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I like to have every book by my favorite authors. I've narrowed my collection down to a dozen or so authors, and then it becomes a matter of completion. I collect both US and UK editions of my favorite authors, try to get the advanced reading copies. I don't collect later editions or paperbacks, so I might have 3 or 4 editions of a particular title. Right.
What would you say is the most prized book within your collection right now?
Well, that varies. I've narrowed my collection down to a dozen or so authors, and completing it and finding those rare or esoteric titles is difficult. This particular book is written by Jeff Deaver. Most of you haven't seen it, and Jeff would probably not appreciate me showing it, but it's called Voodoo. It's a book that he wrote early in his career that he would rather have disappear, but to have a copy of it in pristine condition.
In a paperback format.
Well, it's the only thing it came out in. It wasn't worth reprinting in hardcover. Oh. But no, those are Jeff's words, not mine. But anyway, that's one of them. The next book probably is David Morrell's First Blood. You all know this is the book that launched Rambo and a whole series of books, but this is one of David's early books, and to find a really pristine copy of this first edition is really hard.
What would you say that might be valued at today?
I'd say a couple $1,000s.
Oh, good night. Okay. Wow.
Then most Michael Connelly fans appreciate Black Echo with the visible blue band, which gave a $5 refund when you bought his first book, and most people took the band off and sent it in to get the $5 refund. But that blue band now on this book doubles its value if it's intact.
Wow.
Probably the most impressive book in my collection is Iceberg by Clive Cussler. This is the Dodd Mead edition, very rare. There were only 4,500 copies of it made, and most of those went to libraries. So if anybody collects Cussler, this is the book that is the anchor stone of every collection.
Sure.
And then finally, I brought Lullaby Town by Robert Crace. Robert Crace is one of my favorite authors. He writes about an LA detective by the name of Elvis Cole. Crace used to write for television and is probably well known for LA Law and a few others. But Lullaby Town is the most scarce book in that series, and I found this at a book sale for $1.
No kidding.
And it's worth about $1,000 today.
Oh, so. Wonderful. So what we've covered is why you collect as a book collector to begin with, and that's reading things that you're interested in, storylines, authors that you have an interest in. The visual art of collecting, setting them up in your library is always fun. And then the stored value, recording what those books are worth, keeping track of where you purchase them, that's important, grading them. And then the completion aspect. These are things that we cover also in our Book Collecting 101 series. It's a PDF series. You're welcome to sign up for it. Just send an email to customer service at vjbooks.com and we'll start sending those book collecting PDFs off to you. We also have a Blog Talk Radio podcast where we interview about once or twice a month well-known authors. It's a 30-minute interview. Our interview host is outstanding, very interesting with interviews from top sellers of today. You might want to subscribe to that, at least listen into it. Next, don't forget to like us here and on Facebook and subscribe to our channels. John and Virginia with VJ Books. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
We're talking books.